Today we're going to be looking at some pastel watercolour sets. I got this one from a local store called Typo, and I also just received this in the mail. I ordered one thing on the Prime Day from Amazon, and this has come from Amazon USA. It only took a week to get here, which is really awesome, and I just cannot wait to open this, so let's get into it. There we go. Only one thing in the big bag. This is one of these watercolour confections sets. I have most of the other ones. There's one that I'm still missing, but it's really expensive at the moment. This one I've had my eye on for ages, and it was also quite expensive, but they had a bit of a price drop, and I'm so happy to finally add this to my collection. They've changed the boxes in the meantime. I really like the new design. So let's get this open and check out the colours. Oh look, here they are on the side here. So these are vintage pastels. They also have another pastel set which I do own, and maybe I will show all of those at a later time, but let's just look at this one today. Ooh, look, it's got a new tin. The other Prima Marketings don't have this, but I think this company must have bought them out. I'm not too sure about that. But this looks exactly the same as the other ones that I have. So we'll open this up. Oh, and it's even got a nice little swatch card. And that feels like watercolour paper, so I will be swatching on this. Oh, we've had an escapee. So all of them are individually wrapped and they have their names on them. So I will unwrap all of these and then I will swatch out this card. But just before I do that, let me just show you the other set that I have here. I hunted high and low for the pastel set. Typo are really great at the moment for bringing in all these new and unusual art supplies, but they're not very good at keeping them in stock. It's like they'll have things for a while and then you never see them again. And they do have another watercolour paint set which is your standard colours, and I've got so many standard colours I didn't bother with that. But then I saw they had a pastel set and I looked around everywhere and no one had them. We just happened to go into one local store for something else and I saw one left on the shelf, and I could have sworn that was not there last time. But there we go. I finally grabbed it, and now I'm going to check these out. I really hope they're good colours. I have no idea what this quality of paint is like. I would say it's student grade, but I am very curious to test them out. So I've got an old paint tin that's been laying around. It's quite stained because I had used it for some other colours, but at the moment it's empty, so I thought that I would squeeze all of these tubes out into some half pans and put them into this tin because it's much easier to use them like that. Alright, I need to open this up. So those are 12mm tubes, or 0.4 US fluid ounce. Okay, so what I think I'll do is squeeze all of these into half pans and get this one set up. I will unpack all of these and have these ones, and then we could swatch them out and see what they look like. Done. Now for my favourite part, the swatching. I really need to get a swatch stamp from somewhere. I can't find one anywhere and it's very frustrating having to rule them out, but never mind, I've got this for now, and one of these days I will find a swatch stamp so I can just stamp them on and it will save so much time. My camera decided to shut down in the first lot of filming I did and the file corrupted, so I'm missing a couple of them there. Starting off with Golden Glow there, and then going into Terracotta. I also had the Periwinkle and Sage. As you can see, they're all really pretty colours, and I'll point out that on the swatch card it even has the pigment numbers, which is really fantastic, and I noticed that some of them don't even have white in them and are a mix of two other pigments. So that's interesting. But the set overall was nowhere near as opaque as I thought it was going to be. And check how dark that charcoal is. That's a pure black pigment there, so it's not really a pastel, but I do like it. Overall, the colours are lovely and delicate, and I really love the set. I think the pinks in particular are really pretty. So going on to the Typo Pastels, the paints were still wet, so it was a little bit difficult picking them up without kind of pushing them in and making a bit of a mess, but I managed to get some of the pigment onto the paper. They were a lot more chalky, and I would say that all of them have been mixed with a white colour. Although, as you'll see a bit later, that titanium white, which is the last one there, and I moved that from the front to the end just because it made a bit more sense to me, it's not very opaque at all when you actually use it over black, and I painted over the black writing. It just wasn't very great. But all of the colours were very pale, except for that dusky cerulean, and yes, I'm not too sure how they're going to go as a set. So here we have them all swatched out. I'm not sure I'm convinced by this set yet. The paints were quite gluggy because I'm using them wet, so I really want to let them dry for a while before I do an actual painting, because it is just easier to re-wet drier paints than it is to dig your brush into something that's already really wet, because it just gets everywhere and it's a mess. I don't know what it is with white lately. I've seen in a few sets, if you've been watching my other videos, that titanium whites or just any whites in watercolour sets have been just not opaque enough. The colours are quite nice. I just don't know what it's going to look like in a painting yet, so I'm going to withhold judgment for the moment. It's really hard to tell from the swatches if I like them or not. I do really like this set though, I have to admit. The colour palette is really lovely. Even though that one is really dark and not what I would consider a pastel, I can see it being quite a useful colour to add some shadows and things in. I love that soft lilac and the apple blossom, they're beautiful. Also the dark rose, the breezy. These ones are really pretty, but then I also like these ones, so yeah, I think I like all of them, and I like that they have quite a vintage feel to them as well, which is why they called them vintage pastels, I guess. But I am quite impressed with this set. I have liked all of the sets by Prima Marketing. All of their watercolour confections are really good. Let me know if you want me to do a review on all of my other sets as well, because I have them all there, I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So yes, I think what I'm going to do is let these dry, think of some paintings to do with them, and see what I can come up with. It's a few days later, and there is a slight problem with these. They have all cracked, and they've gone this horrible kind of damp marshmallowy texture, and they smell awful. They smell really strongly of dampness, you know, that damp moldy smell you get if your carpet's really wet or something like that. Oh, they're horrible. I really don't want to use them, but I'm going to do one painting with them because I've poured them out now, and I do want to see how they behave now that they're actually kind of dry. I'm going to use my gouache brushes for this. I don't think I'm going to use my good ones. So I'm going to do a painting with this set first, and then I will go and paint with these. I might actually do the same painting with both so I can directly compare them. Okay, I've got a small watercolour paper block here. This is the Montmartre one, 300 GSM cold press paper and cotton as well, so it's a really nice paper. And I've just drawn 2 stacks of macarons on here. I'm going to paint one side in the vintage pastels and the other with the Typo Pastels, and then we can directly compare them. So let me get painting. I started off with the Typo Pastels, and thankfully they actually did re-wet relatively well, and they weren't as nasty as I was expecting them to be, because they had just gone so gross with their cracking, and I wasn't really looking forward to using them. But the colours picked up relatively well. Though being pastels, they are very light and pale, so it was extremely difficult to get any values out of this set. Everything is all of the same shade, and when you dilute them with water they only get lighter. So I painted one layer, and I had used quite a lot of water as well. I tried to use some of that sandstone as a shadow, but not much luck, so I added in a bit of blue, and then I went over everything again with a thicker layer of paint. And I found that if I used them as a gouache, so rather than wetting them too much, just putting them on as neat as I could, they did work a little bit better. But Overall, I was not impressed at all with this set. I didn't really care for the colours that much. I thought they were too pale. Now moving on to the Vintage Pastel set. Instantly, they work so much better. The colours re-wet easily and they function a lot more like a traditional watercolour, as you can maybe see on the paper here. The colours still are quite pale, but they did build up a bit more than the Typo set, which I was quite limited with. And because I'm pretty sure all of the Typo ones have white in them, they were a lot more kind of opaque, but just felt like they had filler in them, whereas this set here that I'm using now, they felt a lot more transparent, interestingly enough. I was expecting them to be a lot more opaque actually, but they had a lot more of a translucent quality, which I ended up really liking. And as you can see, that dark charcoal colour is really fantastic for getting a great shadow there, so I did like that very much, and I think having one dark shadow colour in there was very beneficial to the set. The name Vintage Pastels worked really well for the set, and I noticed that most of them had a warmer feeling to them. They do have another set, I think it's Pretty Pastels or something like that, which I do have, and those are a little bit more of your traditional pastel colours, actually quite similar to the Typo set, so a bit cooler in colour. These ones had that almost like washed sepia tone over them. So I started another painting, and I'll show you all of them at the end. I was really enjoying the Vintage Pastels, so I wanted to do something else. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out very well. I think the colour combination I used was a bit messy, and I just could not get the proportions of the teacup or saucer correct. I thought I had got them right in the drawing, but it turns out they really aren't working very well at all. So I just persevered and I ended up painting it. I also drew an outline around it, and that was a huge mistake, so I thought I'd share this anyway, even though it's a bit of a disaster, because I do like to show the paintings that don't work out as well as my successful ones. And I'm sure I'm not the only artist that has a few duds in there from time to time. Not all of the stuff we paint is amazing, and in fact quite a lot of it is not. But I still had fun with these. They were really nice to paint with, but I don't think that this painting really shows them to their true potential. Oops, sorry about that. But I figured you might get a laugh out of this really wonky looking tea cup and saucer. It was a bit of a lost cause at this stage, so I just went over everything with a pen. Not sure that that helped. In fact, I think it might have just made it look even worse. You can let me know in the comments what you think of that. Oh, well, that is just a masterpiece. Can we pretend I didn't paint this one? That did not work out as I expected. Oh, well, sometimes it happens. But I've got these two as well. This is with the Vintage Pastels, and this is with the Typo Pastels. So the Vintage Pastels work far more like a watercolour. they behave very much like them, as you can see here, whereas the Typo Pastels are definitely more like a gouache. These ones just work so much more nicely, and I really enjoyed working with the Vintage Pastels. I think the colours in them are really pretty, and I do actually really appreciate that there is that one really dark charcoal, because at least you can get some dark value in there. I mean, I'm not too sure how they'd work if you mix them in with other colours. It would probably get muddy quite quickly, but overall it's a really pretty set. I mean, it has its limitations obviously because they are pastel colours, but if you've got this along with other regular colours, it's a great set to have, and I would definitely get this set again. I think it's a really good one. As opposed to these ones, which just were a bit of a total disaster, and I can smell them from here. They're the worst smelling paints that I have smelled in a very long time. So unfortunately, this set was a total letdown, and I would not recommend them. I did not like them at all. I mean, the colours are okay, but they just smell so badly. They don't dry well at all. They just crack really horribly, and they have this horrible sticky marshmallow feel to them. They do re-wet well enough, but yeah, I just wouldn't recommend them. I'm afraid it's a swing and a miss by Typo on this one. Some of the other products are really great, but just not these. Thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope this was helpful if you've been looking for some pastel paints. I would highly recommend the Prima Marketing Vintage Pastel set, and I would not recommend the Typo Pastel set because it was just horrible in just about every way I can think of. So if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click that subscribe button. I have plenty more art supplies to review in the future, and I hope you're having a fantastic day out there. I will see you all again in my next video. Swatch you later. Bye!